So one thing I want to show is a experimental branch of our code. So as I mentioned, we do everything in Mercurial, but we're trying to look at other ways for people to create packages, because as simple as what I showed you was, it's still kind of complicated. And there might be better ways that we can do it. So in order to show you this, I have to get an experimental fork that one of our developers wrote. And so because it's an experimental fork and hasn't been tested, I'll ask for your patience here, because this could go terribly wrong or it could go very well. So we'll never know unless we try. So you notice here I've got this big warning. This is the prototype of future thinking. So this is kind of a peek of where we want to take NuGet. So if I'm creating packages, I want to really have a nice quick workflow from going from my class library into a package. So let's say I'm building this new library that's going to use the Bing library I just installed. So this will be a class library, and I'm going to call it Music to My Ears. And so we have this class here, and I'll add a class. We'll call it Play That Funky Musica. And we'll add a method, public static void now. And then I want to call that Bing library. So what I need to do now is I'm going to use this new command that this new prototype version added called new-spec. And I'm going to use this flag called add build target. And what that's going to do, oh, I forgot to do one thing. Before I do that, like a good developer, let me go to assembly info, and let me make sure that this is populated with what I want it to be populated. Trust me, Microsoft does not want to be associated with this library, so I'm going to use Phil Hack as the name, and then I'm going to say Phil here. In fact, I don't want to be associated. I'm going to call it Hack Enterprises. I need a shell company so that nobody can sue me. They sue Hack Enterprises, right? So now I have this method, and what I want to do here is I'm going to install a dependency. We're going to go to Bing. We're going to go to NuGet and install this Bing library that I just pushed up there. So now that I've installed Bing, I can go ahead and I can, you notice here, remember our Bing sample? Notice it's using the namespace. So that got put into there. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I don't need that. And let's see, bing.soundoffound.play. So it's not very interesting. We're going to, for int I equals 0, I less than 5, I plus plus, we're going to play it 5 times. So this is my library. Oops. So you notice here I'm getting this error message. So this is like the part of the problem of using prototype code. Every time I build, it's trying to create the package for me. And so unfortunately, it's failing for some reason, and I'm not sure why. So you have to bear with me. I'm not sure how to fix that. So what I would do next, though, is now that I have this project, let's look at the NuSpec file that it created. And one of the things I want you to notice here is it didn't package up Bing. Because I installed Bing into this project, it realized, well, Bing is a dependency, so we'll just add a dependency to this NuSpec file. So now I've got this class library, and I've got this NuSpec file that correctly mimics my project structure, dependency structure. So what I can do next is I can let me close that. I can push package dash API key, and then put in my API key there, and actually push the package to the feed right from here. So I can't actually demo this now because the prototype version has an expiration date, and it's long past expiration. So I'll have to get a new version of this prototype. But this is the kind of thing we want to make really just dirt simple and easy for people to create packages as it is to consume packages. And this is something that we're going to do for the future. So one other thing I wanted to point out before I move on is that a lot of people look at this and they see, oh, you're so tied to Visual Studio. Why'd you make that design choice? Well, personally, I know a lot of the professional developers work in Visual Studio, and it's a really nice environment for doing this kind of thing. I think it's a great environment. However, we know that not everyone wants to use Visual Studio, and not everyone can afford it. So we do work in Visual Web Developer, but our core libraries at the very core don't have any ties to Visual Studio. We have layers on top of that, right? We have a layered architecture. So NuGet.core can be used in a command line, as I showed you. And not only that, you can actually use it. And this is an alpha build of Sharp Develop, which is an open source development environment. And these guys went in and they implemented their own version of their own UI, their own NuGet UI on top of what we've done. So you can see here it's a little bit different, but this will work. So in fact, it detected that I already had Elma installed. And I can, who's this guy? Let's add him here. So I can actually install in Sharp Develop as well. So when I mentioned open source, I really meant capital O, capital S, right? Open source, these guys have built on top of what we've done, and it's fine because we're under the Apache license. So let me go back to my deck.